there's something here that's different to, there's a few things different to the last bit. What about the roots though? If there's something that's striking with the roots that we didn't see in the last one. Couple of roots here.
The thickness?
A little bit thicker, yep. Yep. What else?
Deeper?
Not sure. Yeah, similar I reckon. Sort of in that 10 to 30 range mostly. So, and you might think they'd be deeper. There's no calcrete here in this pit, but this is pretty hard. Like, we had a penetrometer, but you know, doing penetration resistance measurements when the soil's dry is a bit meaningless. You just can't push it in, you know. So, you know, this is pretty hard, and so it goes from this loam to a light clay, and you know, we lose this top 10 centimeters again to crusting, and just not a nice environment. Then, you know, you've got crump heads, and then it goes to more massive, like a massive cemented sort of structure. And you can see the land of the horizontal root system, Australia, quite horizontal. So they get down here and then they just start going horizontal. One's found a crack here, but you know, when you see these horizontal roots, then you kind of can see that, well, there's something that's stopping roots from going down. So, and here it's hardness. So, you know, while we didn't want to try and rip into that calcrete there, this is the challenge, isn't it? Like, so we can't really rip much deeper there, but here we'd like to rip, you know, a good 50 centimetres to help get these roots down when they're established. So, and also in the mid-row here, there's far less roots going into the mid-row compared to that pit. Basically, there's none. And close up. Wheel traffic compaction is evident everywhere except really that kind of pit where you've got that rubbly limestone and soil combination. Here, you know, once again, we couldn't do penetration resistance measurements, but little roots, when we do see roots, they tend to be below 40 centimetres, like there's one here that we haven't painted, but they tend to be either sort of stopping about here, so 40 centimetres from the vine row, and then they're at least 40 centimetres deep around, you know, that wheel traffic zone. So we've got a limited root depth and distance into the mid-row, so we've got a limited root volume again, and so we see that across all of these soil pits. And so the vines that are performing better, we tended to score higher with root length density. It's just the same relationship really.
What's the dripper spacing?
I think it's 0.6.
Okay.
So 0.6. One there. One there, yeah. Looks like about 0.6.
And Ramsey's an interesting one, so sort of ordinarily we expect it to be pretty vigorous, but it's been interesting in this trial. I'll talk about it a little bit later too, but the yields have been steadily declining in this rootstock, and we're sort of wondering whether when we opened the pit, we would have figured out that, you know, there was some impeding layer or something to sort of pull it up. So yeah, it was just interesting seeing what we saw to try and figure that out. So I don't know if it's...
So Nick, maybe they've explored the volume quickly.
Yeah.
And then they've explored the volume, and then what do they do next?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, it's looking. I mean, you can say, I think that Ramsey would. I mean, the reason why it's vigorous generally on non-impeding soils is it throws down lots of big, thick roots and explores all the soil volume that's available to it. And as you said, it's just developed quickly. It's reached its maximum kind of yield potential, and now it's just sort of settled out. And there's nothing that's going to change that. I guess the question, always a question for me when looking at something like this is, again, is this what you're looking for, Ben, in terms of yield and balance? And if that's the case, will some of the benefits, the physiological benefits, beyond just the exploration of the soil volume by the roots, there's some other things going on within the rootstock which are going to provide some drought tolerance. So is there some, is there going to be some benefits associated with this rootstock under these conditions, related to its drought tolerance?
Yep. Yeah.
So that's a big question.
I know, and it's hard when they're all in one block because you'd manage them slightly different.
Yeah.
So, on their own. But the truth we're finding is you actually need a few different combinations.
Yeah.
Because in that wet year,
Yeah.
something else might do well in a dry year, so this might do well, and so
Yeah.
I think the more we do it, the more we realise we need that
Yeah.
diversity.
Yeah.
But sometimes that limiting factor that is actually a benefit
Yeah.
Yeah,
as
yeah.
far as quality and managing vigour.
Yeah.
But there's a point where in hot years it may tip over the edge. So
Yeah. And
And
this
I guess-
might be beneficial in hot years.
And that's the question, what, and I'll talk about this a little bit this afternoon, but what is the balance in the future? So say we're getting more extreme weather events, either drier or wetter or hotter, maybe all of those three. How do we build resilience to those extremes? And so sometimes that might be maybe starting with a slightly more vigorous rootstock soil combination to build a bit of a buffer, or it might be certainly understanding what your soils are, and then understanding, matching your strategy in terms of quality and yield and combinations to a mixture of rootstocks and soil types. But having the knowledge is obviously important.
Yeah.
and that's our strategy, is to try to using mainly again 38 to match rootstocks and soil depth
Yeah.
and soil type, and then also to different varieties as well.
Yeah. Yep.